means after the budget is read and inevitably commodity prices shoot up. This morning we are joined by Mr. Newton Buterawa, who is the CEO of Wealth, and Mr. Frederick Kawoya, Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, to help you and I make the budget work for us. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We have been waiting for this budget to be read. Many times we have had conversations and people have told us that not to expect much. Not big changes that we expected for us, Muntu Wawansi. The wananchi is always the one that suffers the most whenever any slight change is made to the budget. It was read out yesterday. Overall, when you look at it overall, let's put expectations aside. Who do you think is being affected the most, and in what way? Which way are they affected?
In my view, thank you for that. In my view, and I've been discussing it with very many other economists and experts and my friend here, I was wondering if Uganda, we have 3/4 of the population in agriculture, and that's where they're getting a living. Why would agriculture take 2% of the budget? So I would think the Ugandan is the most affected with this way of planning. I would have expected to look at the things they would want to do to transform agriculture, such that the biggest population, which actually is there, is going to have something they can do sustainably to help their households. Now, when we look at very many things in the budget, I've also liked the fact that the minister is saying they have allocated money for SMEs. Now that is a plus, but the issue is, are the people really ready to be able to go and pick the money and really use it for things that can help bring sustainable income? Those are the two things I could talk about for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, very interesting. I think I've been listening. I decided to take a walk yesterday when the budget was being read to just hear and see how were people engaging with the process. And I think the most interesting aspect, people look at the budget as tax. The expectations around the tax, not even what will come out of the proposals the government is making. And the concern around tax is also speculative sometimes. So as you walk on the streets today, border, I would say, you see taxes have increased. So the prices normally increase because of that speculative understanding of the budget that's about taxes. And I think that is very important because people don't comprehend the tax process and the tax in its totality, but they pick one aspect of the tax. This is where it becomes interesting that, fuel prices are likely to begin increasing, even when the budget did not slam an increase on excise duty for taxes. But you'll not be surprised when you drive on the petrol stations and the prices are
shilling or two added.
Shilling or two, and that meant to be that taxes have been increased. So which taxes have increased really on fuel? I think this is the one interesting thing. But there are other people who are going to be affected, I think. One, we have seen some taxes imposed on importation of certain goods which come into the country. I think the intention is good, is to promote the local industry. We have this Bubu, Build Uganda, but I think we need to look deeper and ask, what are we doing to build the local capacity to produce the quantities that can meet the demand, the local demand? Because if you don't do that, you are going to create an unnatural scarcity. And so the prices are likely to go up for some of these commodities that are locally produced. And if you cannot manage these prices within the limits within Ugandans can afford, then you are going to create a crisis. And then you'll see people smuggling in the other goods because you haven't looked at it in its totality. I think the other interesting bit with this budget that I can see is the introduction of mandatory tin for license. So we have many traders in the rural areas, in Kalangala. They even have no idea about this tin. They think it's a tin where they keep sugar perhaps. So they don't know what is this tin thing. But we are saying, look, to get a license, everybody must have a tin. It's one of the proposals that has been put in this budget. So the traders don't know. And so they haven't been educated, they have not been sensitized, so they are going to work tomorrow to acquire a license, and then they'll be told, hey, why is your TIN number? They say, which TIN?
Yes.
Which TIN?
Yeah.
So we need, how many people can access the website for URL, login, and acquire TIN number? What is the mechanism for verifying the TIN numbers that people are going to take? Because you don't have the systems in place. So someone is just going to pick a figure. I imagine you are going to get middlemen, someone saying, I help you acquire TIN.
Oh, yes.
And then
That's
they'll
now
write
new
something.
business.
It's
Yes.
going to be new business.
Yeah.
And so they are going to face this exploitation because we need to sensitize them and help them see how to acquire that. What about those who have the licenses and don't have the TIN? What are you going to do to ensure they are brought into the tax bracket? Because the intention is good, but something is missing. In fact, I don't know why in Uganda you have so many numbers. You have the TIN number, you have the NIN, you have the passport number. Why don't we harmonize and integrate and use the ID number? So that's one of the interesting
But
things
Mr.
that I see.
Koya, as you mentioned all these things from sensitization, another thing that we're all on this round table, we've had Mr. Newton come here a number of times on business. Yes,
Yeah.
and you mentioned the fact that a number of people are going to start to look at this as maybe a place to get a business,
Yeah.
earn some money. From the petrol stations, there'll be just one extra 100 shillings added. Yes, but then there's also someone out there who'll say, I need to, an entrepreneur who now needs to start making more money. Yes, with all the taxes and everything that's happening. URA is expected to really, really fund our budget this year. They really have to make sure every loophole at this point in time needs to be closed.
Yes.
So that means someone could be taxed twice, thrice.
True.
So how do you protect that person? So we'll start with you, Mr. Newton, and go to you, Mr. Koya.
Actually, if you thank you, Rich. If you looked at the budget of 40.48 trillion, probably our revenue base is going to finance like 20 trillion. It means we are going to borrow the rest of the money. And if you look at, I've been wondering, because me, I'm a financial advisor. I help people in talking to them into wealth creation. If you look at all the books of faith, if you look at the Quran and you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the longest chapter and the longest verses talking about debt. If you look at the Bible and you look at Proverbs 22:27, they're going to tell you the borrower will always be a slave to the lender. Why is it that always we have this huge amount of debt which comes to finance our budget? It comes with a lot of interest. And if you get that debt burden and you divide it with all the Ugandans, you realize that all of us are indebted by default. So my advice is, I want to tell Ugandans that look at the budget, but then you now have to find your own ways of struggling to live through this country. And what does it mean? They are going to live beyond their means already, because this is what we already see. Then they start coming in with a request for more money. But if we take on that habit as Ugandans, then in our households we are also going to suffer. We need as Ugandans to come up with a practice where we design our simple budget at home and live within the means, not when we have overborrowed. And even when you look at the things we will spend most on, they're not things that actually are going to bring in more wealth. So to me, I really think the common man is going to be burdened by by the interest on the loans, and we are going to really struggle, because if you look at the portion of debt on our budget, it is still too high.
Mr. Koya,
David.
the local man is going to, you know that budget reading is very long, eh?
Yeah.
And Ugandans, our attention span is very, and when it comes to the millennials, I think we clocked out like 10% and we were out.
At the highest.
At the highest 10% of that budget speech, we were attentive. And that must be at the beginning. You know, the president is walking in, and then that's where you're seeing who is there. And then after that, when they start reading those things, you're like, we are now, what is that? For the Wananchi, they probably don't understand the demographics in, the budget reading and all that. But they're going to look at the front pages of the Daily Monitor today, and they're going to look at beer. No government teyagala tunywe ku mwenge gwagikolachi. They're going to look at the toothbrush and say 60% on toothbrushes tebagala tusenye manyo. They're going to look at matchboxes and cigarettes, because this is what before I get into the details of page what 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to page 55. Clearly, if I could not listen for all those hours, I'm not going to read all these details. No. I'm going to take what I see on top here. But is this really a true vindication of what the budget holds? Because for him, he's going to complain about the toothbrush, the beer, because this is what is being shown on the front pages.
Yeah, I think like I was reflecting. The Monta picked out the taxes, front page, talking about the budget.
Yes.
And this is the narrative we need to change, I think. The budget is much more than the tax. This is the mechanism through which government demonstrates its intentions. The programs government is going to deliver on, the sources of money, how they intend to spend that money. And so taxes are just a small part of the budget. This is how we are going to raise part of the revenue need. And I think Uganda needs to look at this budget and comprehend it. One of the areas, for example, you see in the budget are issues to do with SACCOs. SACCOs, we are going to have money. I have a problem with the way we are approaching this issue of SACCOs, because, and my colleague can come in on this, you cannot build a culture of saving by giving money. SACCOs are cooperatives. Cooperatives are built totally in a different mode. But look, we have money now coming in SACCOs. People are going to form groups to get this money. They are not being prepared on what exactly are they going to do with the money. But groups are going to come up just because they have heard there is money to be given. And I think we are destroying our society. We are over-monetizing our society just look for money. And this is part of the budget, which is going to shape the social, the societal interactions, how people look at the public goods about money. This is what is partly in the budget. So people need to look at agriculture. I want to tell you, if I look at this budget, I think for me, for example, infrastructure, road sector is going to have the highest. Over 70% of the winners of the contracts are from China and other countries. So you can say that by and large, the people who are going to benefit most from our budget are those companies and foreigners. They repatriate almost everything. You look at constructors, employment. How many Ugandans get employed with these infrastructure projects? You see Chinese, just manning these tractors, and you wonder, don't we have Ugandans who would have benefited?
I've seen one sweeping a road. I was like, Ugandans are too lazy, they can't even sweep roads.
I think that is all that we seem to be getting from most of these contracts. And I keep thinking, how do we negotiate these contracts? How do you build the local capacity? Why don't we see the growth? If you look at what Ethiopia is doing, I think Uganda needs to borrow a leaf to begin to grow our local, companies to be able to compete and deliver some of these. This is how we can create jobs. But where we have contracts being won by foreigners, bringing their own labor, I think that's a problem I have for me.
Just before you go, Mr. Newton, you come into the conversation.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that taxes shouldn't be something that Ugandans should be looking at. There should be more to it, Mr. Frederick. But for an ordinary Ugandan right now who's on their way to work, they have just hit their car in a pothole.
Yeah.
The roads are not doing so great in some parts. The fuel prices are not the best for them at some point. The things they would want to afford, they can no longer afford. For a number of Ugandans in the corporate world, they seem to be living beyond their means. And you mentioned the fact that Ugandans should be coming into these sectors where we see the foreign man. But are they skilled enough for this place when we have education coming in at maybe number 3, maybe in the top 5 it's there, that when we look at the government saying they're not going to give teachers money, the teachers who are supposed to skill these people, do we not see that if we do not start to prioritize, the common man is only going to look at the taxes?
I think what I meant is that we need to look at the taxes. Very, very important. But let's not stop at the budget reading. Let us understand the taxes proposed. And we try to assess, well, are these fair? What does this mean to me after paying? What do I demand therefore? Because people look at taxes and they just get worried. They get into this paralysis of tax and the fear and the phobia about I'm going to pay. But you pay anyway. take it further than that and say, what is it that my taxes are going to deliver when I pay? Do I expect better, health services, drugs in hospitals, potholes off the road? And then we follow after the budget, because sometimes what we read in the budget is another, but what we execute will be totally different. So if I'm a taxpayer, I need to take interest in what my money has been used for. If I don't get the health services, the potholes on the road, I must demand and ask what was in the budget to address this. If it was never there, then you connect with your leadership. And I think for me, that cycle is what I'm demanding and inviting Ugandans to consider. We need also to ask, he talked about the issue of borrowing. The public expenditure is not being affected. It's increasing, in fact. We are creating more districts, more cities. All this means people need to be paid. But we are borrowing. You have, so many, government officials driving V8, the consumption is high. Why don't we cut on public expenditure instead of thinking of borrowing? Because if you are constrained, then you reduce on your expenditures. In Uganda, you continue with the luxurious expenditure for the politician, and then you keep borrowing. I find that strange for Uganda.
I wanted to ask you, right there when we're talking about expenditure, does it at any point, when this budget is going to be read out, do they ever look out for where money is being spent? Because in any society, if you, Mr. Kawu, you wanted to save some money, you have to first look at where you're spending the money and where you think you can cut costs. When this budget reading or planning is done, do they ever look at where money is being spent to reduce the cost?
And I will.
Is it reflected anywhere when you look at the budget that these people realize that they are spending a lot here, so they have cut it a bit so that they can, because we can't keep spending and then say we are going to save one find a way of saving.
Running the government is going to cost us 10.8 trillion. Now, the key issue is, like I tell you, if you are going to do your budget, your personal budget, you have to be looking at your own priorities. If this is our government, this is our government at NTV. I collect 1 million from you, I collect 2, I collect 1, I collect 2. We have 6 million. If our business is into talking to the people on TV, then we are going to be buying suits, we are going to be buying makeup, we are going to be buying all these things, because our business is looking into, is to talk to the people. Now, if you're the one put in charge of our budget, and we find you've bought land, whereas land is good and it's a good idea to buy, we will be telling you, but you man, our business is talking to people. We are coming in torn shirts, we are, you get the idea. So that's why I was telling you, if you really know that your country has like 75% of the population in agriculture, why are you giving it 2% of the budget? It means you have told us that you've shown us that maybe when you sit there you consider these things, but when you bring them out, for us we are like, probably they are.
Meanwhile, when you're planning that, you need to be reminded that cosmetics has been increased. So when you're buying makeup and hair for you might need to up that a little bit.
Which is true. And also when you look at the idea of telling Ugandans that now we are going to increase taxes on imports, it's a good idea, which makes probably our local guys come up with all these businesses now to replace the imports. But this is what is going to happen. If you look at the Excise Duty Act, which was amended, they're saying you have to register the business from the start. Should we find you when you did not register, you're going to pay 400,000 from the day. Now, that's when you ask, do these guys know about do they know about entrepreneurship and how a business starts? A business starts when I want to focus on the market before I even focus on paying taxes. It will die anywhere at some time. So if I have to now go and look for the guys who have talked about, the guys who are going to start business in, let me help you open a team, let me help you a team. We are going to kill even the entrepreneurship spirit, where guys start by saying, I want to start up this business, but now how do I register?
There's no incentive, because if you want people to register their team members, if you want people to register their companies, you have to give them an incentive. And
Exactly.
one of those incentives could be waving away some of these things that scare people a lot from registering, and it's not there.
And the beauty is, we all know that when you have that cow and you milk it and you milk it and it gives you milk and you forget to feed it, later you will be milking blood.
Now, getting to the point of a number of people, we have had this conversation on this table. We had a conversation yesterday. We've been having a conversation about our budget and not fitting the priorities of the country over and over and over before the budget was actually read, even before the estimates were passed by Parliament. But also another thing coming to the table is now for a Ugandan who's out there wondering, things are about to change for me. I am a business owner who maybe didn't even have a TIN number, and if they find out things, I am in trouble at this point in time. But I'm also someone who has read the paper, and I'm seeing that landlords are targeted, and I am renting. I am going to the supermarket to buy a few things, the imports that I liked, things are changing. How do I, who has been not being able to make my salary fit for me in the month, now it's going to increase? My expenditure is going to increase. How do I start to change? What do I change? Because we're waiting on the government to change, a few things are not. But how do I as a citizen change?
Yeah, I think we need to up our game. One, we must be cautious on the way we spend. We must look at how and where we spend the little that we have. We need to be aware that we are the ones footing this budget as Ugandans. And the more you spend, the more you lose the little you have. So we need to begin to save and prioritize where we are going to save, I think, as a first principle. But we need to see how to widen our incomes. So close a bit the tap, widen the funnel, which brings in. And I think this is where we need to look at all alternative ways of tapping into the existing opportunities in the country and trying to see how we can add value to everything that we do. And I think there is no limit to adding value. We can keep adding value to everything you do. So we need to imagine, expand our imaginations as Ugandans on how best we can increase on the incomes we earn.
Okay, Mr. Newton?
My view on that is usually a no-brainer. You remember when we used to be in school and they say this is the timetable for the exams. Now when they say the exams are coming in 3 weeks, and then they say let's bring the exams in 1 week, everyone is shattered. Everyone is, now why did you give us enough time? But the people who have read, even if you say the exam is tomorrow, they just come for the exam. Now, what I have to tell Ugandans is, even though this is happening, albeit that they will follow it in any way, for us, when we organize ourselves into guys who have downsized, for example, we really have to look at this. Kids are expenditures. Let's start from there. Kids are expenditures, and Uganda produces 1 million kids every year.
So we need to produce less.
We need to produce less, such that we are not going to struggle with fees. We've been crying for fees for years. Now we're like, okay, let's also limit there. You look at the things we're putting money into. Why are you having 2 cars? We are now going to reach a time when we say, this car is big, it's consuming a lot of fuel, which has been increased. When I sell this car and I buy the smaller car, I've solved the transport problem. Now I'll struggle maybe with the reputation problem that you'll see me in a smaller car, but then I'm not giving them a lot of money. I'm not spending a lot of money on fuel. So we will need to downsize. We are going to have people who are going now to sell maybe the second home, and you rent while you're a landlord. Things like that, and it will come out work when we organize ourselves. Whatever they will do that will come to affect us in a way, it will get to us. Exactly, we will be hedged.
If you just decide, you see, there's 60% on malt beer, well, we are going to drink quite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get your pineapple. It ferments at home.
Exactly. By and large, the East African governments look like they have prioritized infrastructure. And you know, when it's just Uganda, you'll think, well, it's just the country. But when it's the region that is prioritizing infrastructure, is that our biggest challenge?
I would want to say that infrastructure is very important, especially for industrialization and reduce the cost of doing business. And the model we have is to see that we can, create an enabling environment for industrialization. So infrastructure becomes important. And I have no reservations over infrastructure. But the challenge I have is the way we are looking at infrastructure. So much to do with connecting the cities, the towns, and yet the
time we had
production is
a
happening
gentleman here
elsewhere.
who told us, roads are being constructed and people are drying the maize on the roads.
In fact, you can drive. I come from Luwero, so I use Zirobe Road. The biggest product you saw on that road is wood, charcoal. So you keep asking, sand. Those are like the three, and stones. So I keep asking, this was one of the most expensive roads in this country. And you know what? Because we have not connected the rural production zones to these highways. And so we get excited with highways, and we do not think about if I showed you photos I have from Kapchora, oh my God, deep in the road, people cannot bring the food to the main road. And so we need to look at how do we connect. So the focus shouldn't be just on the highway road. Then, like I said, who is winning these contracts is a big concern, because we are just hemorrhaging the country.
We're supporting
others create jobs. And lastly, I want to say that I think even the moving for infrastructure is by and large driven by who is willing to lend us money, not what we want to do. So if China comes and says, we want to fund your levy, then we say, oh, standard layer again. Then we justify. So we start with what's the money. And I think that is the drive around infrastructure, because someone is willing to give us money for infrastructure, and then we are just competing. Everybody in the East African region is trying to, expand their airports. So I don't know which one's going to be the
and let's not forget that we have cases of corruption where, for example, we have the Northern Bypass, which we even up to today, you go past that road every single time a lorry is coming. It's literally in your face, and you're wondering why this much money has been spent on a road that looks like they didn't really plan on it, and then there's more money going to be spent to expand it. It's like, okay, you guys forgot that cars are big, or you thought it was going to be a bicycle road or something.
The planning in this country can be interesting. If you go and drive on Busaba on Express Highway and the connecting areas, you see slums. This is you would think that this place would be developed, but tell you what, no planning for sewer system, no planning for anything. We don't know where the roads are going to be. You pass industrial area, you see people building into the road, and you're like, okay,
what is
20 years from now we will want to expand. But people are building into the road. So
waiting to be paid.
So it's going to be more expensive because we are just not planning.
Recently, Kampala was voted in a research that was done. Kampala, one of the best cities above Nairobi. When it rains, it's a different story.
So even if when it doesn't,
I don't know what is best. Best in terms of lifestyle. People are happy in Kampala, maybe. Maybe that's what we're looking for. Fly over Kampala. You sit on a plane and you have this foreigner trying to people. You want to say, oh, please, don't look down.
Don't look down.
You see,
look at the green on the other side.
You see a slum, no planning whatsoever. We have no idea. We have to train urban planning. I don't know what planning we are doing in this country. I'm totally disappointed for me with the way you are planning.
As we wrap up this bit, we talked about mentioning saving.
Yeah.
Now someone who's out there will say, let me save by not paying taxes. These people are not planning, as we've just been mentioning, they're not planning for where the money should go. There's corruption, someone else is going to eat the money that I'm going to pay, declaring pay as you earn for a number of people who are in the informal sector. You're not even having the TIN number. Someone doing what they need to do as a citizen. Someone would say, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
One, I think we need to form, because one of the problems we have is the cost of capital in this country. And so if we want to do business, we need to find ways of mobilizing capital. And one of the best and sustainable ways is saving. So we need to form circles. Now, the circles I'm talking about are different from what perhaps the circles government is talking about. The circles I'm talking about are those where you pull and save. And it's from those savings that you borrow. I'm not talking about circles to get money from government, because I can assure you they can never work.
True.
If you create a circle to acquire money, that is money to be stolen. And so government is preparing those type of, but I'm talking about circles where you cultivate a culture of voluntarism, saving, discipline, and then investment. Because if you put resources, then you can invest. And this is, I think, what Ugandans should look at. Let us forget about commercial banks. You can never borrow from commercial banks at 20%, 18%, and you think you are going to start a business and you sustain it. So I think that is one thing. And I think the other is to begin to learn the discipline of growing and maintaining the businesses we start. We start many businesses in Uganda, but they die prematurely just because the way we conduct business. You go and look at a person at a reception and you just wonder, this is a lodging facility someone has started, and there's this lady, and you are like, this person, what the hell is she doing here, or what the hell is he doing here? So the culture of doing business in Uganda needs to change.
Where does a tax come in on that?
The tax, I think, one, from my perspective, is that we should pay where we have to pay, but we should not stop at just paying. We should take interest in what our taxes are being used for.
So ask the right questions as
ask
you pay
those
your taxes.
questions. Let us not shy away. Some people in Uganda, people fear politics, so they think by asking, I'm engaging in politics. Politics, this budget is politics. The way resources are allocated is politics. So if they are getting resources from you, they are allocating your resources, and you don't want to take interest in where it's going because you are fearing to be political, you are getting it wrong. Human nature is political, so get interested in what your money is being used for and ask the hard questions to our leaders.
And just to add a little, Ugandans should pay taxes. We actually ought to pay taxes, because even if you read, Jesus paid taxes in Matthew 17:27. They found him, he had no man on him, he had to make a miracle, send Peter to the lake in Matthew 17:27. He opens the fish, gets a coin, pays the 2 drachma temple tax. Okay. Now, what I would like to also add is the saving culture. We need now to know that Uganda today, you're not going to handle it alone. Look for friends. You know each other.
Save together.
We start to save with a goal, and we invest our money. It's going to be very, very hard in the next 10 years to acquire land, to do business. So we will need to have pooled funds, as in form of equity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr.
Yes. Last point. Ugandans need to also gain some level of integrity. Trust in Uganda, being honesty, because it's so difficult to work with any Ugandan business, because we are just too suspicious. We are we like stealing. We are a zero economy. One which daily,
right from the top to the bottom.
Integrity, This economy of our Dilchi cannot grow in a business. So we need to change our attitude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buteraba Newton, the CEO of House of Wealth, and Mr. Frederick Kawoya, Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, helping us make more sense of the budget reading that was done yesterday and how we can make it work for us. That has been our Kickstarter conversation. In just a few minutes, we'll be getting into our Take Note. But of course, if you want to have your say on this, the hashtag is morning@NTV. Go right there and have your input, and we'll share it before the show ends. In a short bit, we'll be getting into our Take Note.